as long as this. So that will be good. And I have a couple of questions that I'm going to type right into chat right now. At the bottom, there should be a little chat thing. And last week, I said that I would email the name of the Caran d'Ache Museum Aquarelle white. That white, that is the only white that will go over so that you can see that or write it down. Caran d'Ache Museum Aquarelle. It is, I'll switch cameras here. Hang on. You know, I'm so quick with the technology. Where's that button? Okay. Okay. So here's my little dog. And if I were to take the Museum Aquarelle and bring a highlight in, or I've got a lot of layers here. I'm going to pull back just a little bit. I don't know if you can see that I'm really getting the white to come back. It also can be used wet. I have a cup of water here. Like I have in the past used the Inktense white, which is another one. The Inktense pencils are, and we'll talk more about them today because we're going to do a little bit of fixed medium. They're a color pencil that you can, I don't like to use them so much dry, but if you were sketching and rather than a watercolor pencil, which when you get it wet, it goes lighter, this is ink in the stick. So it's got a Inktense pencils. They're made by Derwent. I'll type that in too. And I just keep a black and a white on hand. Yes, I have a bunch of other colors, but I keep a black so that when I want to get that black really black, I could moisten the tip of a black Inktense pencil and get it really black. And as you just saw me doing with the Aquarelle pencil, I can brighten up a highlight that's kind of dulled down and there's nothing else you can do. But using this one dry, you can get light that will actually, I'm going down into the burgundy down here, it will actually go over the white. I guess because it's a strong formula, being a watercolor pencil. So that I had mentioned last week and then forgot. And Meredith, you asked me about the brush and pencil titanium white, and there's a whole line of products, and I don't quite understand them. Aliana Nicholson does work a lot like me in the portraiture. It's really sort of oil painterly. It's based on oil painting and it's based on traditional portraiture. Most of these things are to add some grit to the surface so that you can go an additional layer. And so I do have a couple of her products. I've been given them and I don't really understand that titanium white stuff. I wish it just came in a stick because we're all used to using the pencils, and that's why I think it's like titanium white pigment, but just in a powder rather than, okay. So next thing I was going to do is open up our little folder here. Which I meant to have up before, but I started talking. And I'm going to share the screen so that Some people sent some things in. I just want to, there we go. Okay. So these are yours, Debbie, right?
Yeah, that's the one I'm working on. I did a little bit more today.
When I go back to the dog screen, actually here, I'll stop sharing right now and I'll go back to the dog screen. The thing I wanted to show you about the edges, and in art, it's always about the edges. Okay, the dog's fur is going out, but so that it doesn't look rough out there, because here at the edge of the head, it's rough, and I'm doing in pencil over it because it'll be easier to erase, but also you can see what I'm doing. But out here, I don't want it to look fuzzy. So just, I'm going out, but at the last minute, I'm curving into the line of it.
Oh, okay.
And that'll give the body shape, or go up to the line of it and then come in. And I know a cat is fluffier and you want some of that fluffier, but give it, kind of give it a little body direction. Let me go back to, you don't have to do it everywhere, because obviously on the neck, it almost has a mane, and you know, you're fine with all of that. But some places, like I think some places here, he might be fluffy, and some places it might be turning just slightly. Obviously a tail, it's going to be fluffy out.
Right. He's pretty fluffy all over.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and the other thing is,
you
know, I think over here where it's done, probably, you know, sort of scraped into the green, or the green's coming in, it's narrowed it. So I see, yes, they're little fluffy hairs, but over here, it's still a little coarse, but you haven't done the background.
Right.
I like this. Yeah, it's, you know, it looks so good. And I was even comparing it to the one you did before, and it's like, we all improve, like piece to piece, you know, getting better and better and better all the time. And the eyes, I don't, you know, it's hard when I don't have the person's reference picture, but I think there could be a little more shading in the eyes, even though they're bright green, you know, like a little bit more of
color,
shadow in them. You've got a little in here, but it also might need a little more over there. This one might be a little brighter, but maybe even in the corners. You know, like I said, I'm guessing, I don't have your reference photo. And then your pig was,
I used a lot of blue in him, but he's really more of a gray, and I was trying to tone down the blue, but I couldn't really cover it. But now that I look at it, I kind of like the coloring.
yeah,
even though it's not the same, it's not authentic, but I kind of like it.
The fun thing about art is that we can see that little bit of highlight color. Like on my puppy here, I'm actually doing it on a blue paper. I'm actually adding a very aqua blue to it, because it's the complementary color to the orange fur. And we can see those colors in there the same way there's purple and burgundy in the shadow, and you can see colors in there, and the blue in there doesn't bother me at all. You always want to be careful where you have the gold. This spot right here where there's warm right next to the blue. And I get that too. It's like, how are you doing orange flare right next to the blue? Because your brain wants to go warm hair, cool hair. But if the cat has that coloring, you may want to pick something a little more rust color rather than this ochre color right here. Because that's the only part that stands out.
Kind of goes right to that, which I don't want.
Right, because the yellow's right next to the blue. So you have complementary colors kind of next to each other, which works just the same as having strong values next to each other. So your eye pops over there. You may want to just erase back the gold a little bit. And yeah, and then the pig too is very, very cute, and almost the reverse, that he's very, very smooth here, and almost like his beard is trimmed too perfectly. So he may want a little fluffy unevenness like you have in the ear. There's some longs and some shorts. Yeah. But you did a great job on the hay. Hay and grass can just like drive you mad.
Thanks.
So good job on him.
Thanks.
Glad you did it. And you know, it's just like that.
I think these so cute.
reverse, you know, where I said to, with the eye to do, if you want to do draw anything with the opposite colors, you know, anybody can, those are extra projects. They will only serve to improve, but I know we're also short on time. And so this one, I always add the name and they disappear. I put it down here in the notes and it's like, I should put it up here on the slide and they disappear. This one is this Cindy's?
Yeah, this is Cindy.
Yeah. I am just amazed at the brown you got. It's beautiful. Did you just stick to the 3 colors?
Yep.
Good job. That's
Yeah,
great. Now, the only thing too is now that you have the good color to add in the shading that up here in these kumquats in the cup, they're so well shaded. Now these want to be shaded and also the shadows on the wood.
Right.
And if you feel like the wood is dark enough, then take an eraser and lighten up some areas so that you have light and dark that was happening, so that you have shadows, so things don't look like they're floating.
Okay, good.
Computer's dinging because I need to close Facebook because everybody's going to be like, Happy Mother's Day, and Happy Mother's Day to everybody who didn't hear me say so earlier. And then the cup, I feel like it went from blue to gray, but except for the reflection, I'm not seeing enough of the reddish purplish and some of the other colors.
Okay.
And if you feel like this is too up and down, then make sure you get sort of that swirly, you know, at least cross stroke. You can make your strokes little ovals, but you can all, which works
Right.
well on something like this. Because anytime you go one direction, like with the wood, if I feel that you're going very horizontal with your strokes, well, that's great because that's where the wood grain's going. But then, you know, and then this was Rita's, which is coming along great. Lots of tones in the cup. So I feel like one of the first lessons I ever did in colored pencil years ago was how to draw rust. And they had you layer a billion colors, but they were like burnt sienna and a bluish purple and a, you know, whatever. The more you layer, I mean, even though we're just using the 3 colors, the more you layer, the more it really looks like that old metal. So see how that's getting here with this purple bit and a little bit of the, and then you just watch it. If it's the blue and yellow are mixing and starts to look greenish, make sure you throw in that red. Always keep your color wheel in front of you and throw in the complementary colors. Your kumquats are coming out great. And just like we were talking about edges with the animals, edges are important in art to painters. They're just, there's a hard edge and there's a soft edge. There's really opaque things and there's really transparent things. So when you do something and it has a nice hard edge, like this edge of this kumquat, it feels like a real solid 3-dimensional item. If it kind of gets fuzzy, we get not sure where this thing ends, or if it's really made of solid metal. Like, give things that are hard, give them a good hard edge. The cloth, be fuzzy on it, but the wood may be softened down. Things that are in the background, soften them, but things that are up front and you want them to feel like real tangible items, give them a crisp edge. So, because those are the things that bring anything to the forefront. A change in values, complementary colors next to each other, and a hard edge. Soft edge is like the blurring of the photograph in the background. It's less important. So just on some of these, you know, and then here, make sure it's real fuzzy because that's just a reflection. And here, the edge of the cup, the arm of the cup, you want that hard. But I know this is unfinished. I just thought it was a good time to bring it up because you can see it.
Okay,
And,
great.
yeah, what were you saying, Rita?
I said, thank you.
Oh, okay. And this one we have 2 pictures of, and Meredith did go ahead and purchase the tutorial, so she got a few in-between steps. I know I just gave you guys some pictures. It's coming along so nicely, really nicely. And I'm glad you took out a few, this is even further along, a few of the water droplets. I see you took them out, which is nice.
I actually just took out one.
This
One
one,
big,
that was
just
right here.
one big one I took out. Yeah.
Yeah.
It changed it.
Everything. It was like, oh, good. Now they don't bother me. Now it just looks like condensation. And you see this turn here where it's turning, instead of feeling like the handle ended, I get this feeling like it's turning up into the side. It's just the smallest little turn. It's like what I was saying about the top of the dog picture or the edge of the cat. You just give it that tiny little turn, and I feel like I don't need to see the other side of the cup. My brain tells me exactly what's going on because that little curve of the other side of this thing that's holding the handle on is just continued just slightly and turned up in the correct angle up into the cup. So it's nice. And I can't wait to see what you do with the wood. The kumquats are coming along beautifully. Anytime you have on an object or in a picture, from your whitest bright to your absolute darkest dark, even if it's in a small amount, like look down here in the corner, I have white highlights going all the way to black. It gives the person a sense of reality. There isn't a lot, there's just a dot of white and there's just a dot of black, but I feel like these kumquats are a real thing. So anytime you have the full range of values, the full range of 1 million different values they are, from sunshine to a black hole, and you show them within the space you have this picture, then that's great. And then we were going to draw this guy, this water and this sky, and do a little bit of mixed media while we're at it. Do you guys have this picture out? I was just looking for something. Do you all have a reference picture of that, or do I need to leave it up? Because I'd rather have my picture up, whatever I'm working on.
I have one.
Yeah, good. Okay. I am closing down my Facebook so it doesn't ding on me. Okay, I'm just putting this in front of me. I chose this color paper, and here was another question that we had, and it was how to choose your paper color. Did you, Meredith, were you thinking anything more specifically than paper type, paper color?
No, nothing more than paper color, simply because when you looked at the photograph of this wilderness scene, there was a lot of blue in it, but then we were choosing a brown. And then if you read, I can't say her name, Aloyna Nicholson.
Mm-hmm.
If you read her, she always uses white. So just trying to understand what the reasoning and what the thinking is with the different colors and how that's a different point of view.
Yeah, let me give you my point of view on it. And I did have a couple of papers here to show you what my thinking was. Now, this one was an easy one because the whole picture was that color. And so we're just working into it. And as we're learning to build that fur base, there's a layer already there that's the color of the grass, the bunny, everything in the picture. Working on white is actually very difficult. It's not as easy as you would think, except in our kumquats where, oops, I have no idea where I put mine, where you want to have that white highlight and those darks and to be able to control it. Sometimes doing something like doing this bunny fur, like Rita's cat, you tried it on white, and doing a white cat on white, you know, it was easier to put it on gray, and then you had something to put the white on so the white could stand out. If I was drawing white on here, it may come out funny. Some whites will dirty it and make gray, and some whites will, I mean, you're not going to get lighter than the white paper, so what am I doing? So this one is being drawn where the white fur is the white paper as a, but I don't like to work on white paper, and I think that's the oil painter in me, that your first underpainting covers the whole surface. So in that first covering, you have laid down some kind of tone or underpainting that you're working into. So on this guy and my other fox, I'm working on the reddish paper. I was going to flip it over and I'm like, no, I take down all my pictures. Okay, so he's on a reddish paper. I think it's this color right here. So I'm just working into it, even though at the end, for the most part, the colored pencil is so thick, not a bit of the paper will show through. And if there is that color, I usually keep a pencil around that is the color of the paper, and I've colored it in. I've brought it back in, and that's my style of working after all these years. Now, when I have, I'm going to grab this off the wall, a picture like this, a lot of portrait artists are working with a red background underneath of the skin tones, and it kind of almost comes through. It makes the colors richer. It always informs your decisions. And then of course I've left the paper showing through on this. I was seeing an artist do such a thing in oil for her ladies in red kimonos, Stephanie Rue, who's from Scotland. And I thought, I wonder what that would look like next to baby skin. And so of course I had to give it a try. So, but they use this very bright poppy red, quinacridone, red crimson or whatever they call it. And it's a very red poppy color. I took a portraiture class with someone in oil painting, and he made us tone all our canvases this color. The traditional way is that you have that olive gray background being the sort of a complementary color to Caucasian skin. It makes the skin sort of pop and come forward and look rosy and healthy next to the green. You can see even here when I have red next to green, they're complementary colors and one pops. The reddish tones pop. I had an old couple that I had to do, an older couple that were not well, and I was doing their portraits for Christmas. And I chose not the poppy red, but sort of a tomatoey, a little bit more muted red color paper. Although at the end, the picture looked like it had an olive background and their clothes might have been gray and their hair was gray, but it came through just a little bit. But even though I choose that paper, for the most part, when I'm done, there's no paper showing through. There's so many layers here that if it looks reddish, that's because of the reddish pencil. It's not because of the reddish paper. But I want something to work into, and it's called imprimatura in painting, for those of you who are painters. that you would lay down that poppy red color and then just work into it, or you'd lay down the olive gray and you'd have your canvas pre-primed or toned with that before the person sits down for you to paint them. So it's an oil painter thing. A watercolorist would not do that. They would take their white paper and they would work reverse leaving their paper as the white for as long as they can. Even though some of these whites are already becoming tans and grays, the true whites are the paper, that's the watercolorist. And the pencil artist would do it that way, like a graphite pencil artist would do it that way. So when I'm making the decision of what paper, my heart and painter's spirit wants me to grab a color, because that's my underpainting. So if I was going to paint the bunny, I would have taken my white canvas and toned it all this color, because why waste time? You don't want to look ever at, even though this is, I never got further than what we did in class. I have so many things going. So, but I never have to look at it as the bunny's head next to the white, next to nothing. If it's going to end up that color, I want to get it that color as soon as possible. And that means whether I'm toning it that color or whether I choose the background to be that color. So for drawing, I can choose a colored paper. For painting, I would take my canvas and pre-tone it that color that I need to be everywhere. So behind me, if I switch my camera, behind me, I can tell you, and I don't know if this will be helpful to you, but the butterfly girl up there, she's on purple paper. That doesn't mean that's why her skin is purple and her hair is purple. I drew that, but it did inform my decisions, like choosing to make the wings yellow. It just looked perfect. I already had purple paper, and yellow and purple are complementary. The ballerina girls with the fans, they're on a sort of buff tan chamois colored paper, but it is not the color you see anywhere there on the paper, because obviously they have been drawn in all flesh tone, and behind I used a whole bunch of ginger root and light umber for the floor and ginger root for the wall, and then the guitar colors. But I wanted to keep all in that tone, because in my brain I was thinking about El Jaleo by John Singer Sargent, with the Spanish lady and the wall of guitars. So even though they're posed like they got, the color scheme was that painting. The cat I did on a white mixed media board, and she was on a pale green paper. It was something bright and summery and yellowy looking. And both of those I was using watercolor on them. My fox I did on the red paper again. If I'm going to use watercolor, I might use a mixed media board, which is going to be white, but then I'm mixed media adding the watercolor in. So in picking today's picture, when I looked at that photo of the landscape, which I'm just putting before me, I see all of what we forget in the rocks and the water, the brownish, because the first thing we want to see is the reflection of the blue to the sky. And I thought it would be great to do that in sort of a negative way, of taking that slice of the sky and making it blue, and then putting the blues in the water, but letting a lot of the water be that brownish until we add rocks and greenishness and all the other stuff. So I was really seeing that color and chose.
Lisa?
Yeah.
Lisa, we can't see it.
The picture?
No, because we're seeing your background now.
Oh, yeah, my paper. Hang on just a second. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
But you have a copy of the photograph, right?
No.
That I
don't.
To you?
Yeah, but I didn't print it off because my printer doesn't.
Oh.
I didn't print it off.
Unfortunately, there is no way until later in editing for me to have up on the screen. I can either do one or the other.
I can get it.
Yeah.
I'll put it on my iPhone.
Yeah, like put it on your phone or put it on your, I sometimes have two things, like I have all of us on part of the screen, and then I'll have my, I'm trying to get rid of something. I can't. Never mind. I won't do that during class. And then I have the picture up here. So I have two things up on my screen. But if I share the picture with you, I'll share it with you just for the fact of showing you what I'm looking at and why I'm.
I have it on my iPhone. I'm fine.
Yeah, but I just wanted to point out, like, I see all this brown and this brown coming in between. And yes, it's greenish, it's green trees reflecting the water has an olivey look to it. There's brown underneath the grass. So unless you want to lay brown down and then lay grass on top of it, how about just laying the grass over the brown? There's brown in the trees and brown, I just see brown everywhere except the sky and the water reflection. So even though you would go in and you would add a whole bunch of other stuff, there's so much brown in this picture. It's the color of my paper. So I picked sort of a cardboardy colored paper, like a craft paper, mailing wrapping paper. For my, that's the color of it, but it is a cardstock paper. But anything in that range, if you have a tan paper, whatever you chose is fine. If you want to try it on a different color, if you want to even use the buff color like we did for the rabbit, whatever you chose will work. You can work on white paper. You will just have to be looking at white paper. So the first day of class, in a painting class, if you have, by the end of class, or the first day of painting a painting when you're painting on your own, and this is your first session and I'm going to do an underpainting, I don't want any white canvas showing. And I would tell you that if you were in a painting class with me. So we won't. Even my bunny, I never worked any further with. Well, guess what, teacher? I have no white canvas because my ivory creamy colored imprimatura is already there. I just need to work the grass into it, work the bunny into it. The other bunny that's on white, that's a different story because it is going to be white. Maybe. Maybe not. Okay. And what else did you want to ask? So you said something about coverage. And so that was paper choice. But coverage is so much more than, I know someone asked last week, I think it was Karen, and you said, why don't I do the bunny and I start from the back and go forward? And I was saying, that's fine. That will give it, but that would be like you took one row of hairs and laid them down. And there's so many thick layers of hair on an animal that it's deep with hairs. I feel like I would have to dig through that hair to find the skin. That's how it really is on an animal, not just one layer laid down and then the paper still showing through. So my coverage, especially on any of my people, is so, we are made of 28 translucent layers of skin. And when I was painting portraits, I would try to come as close to that many layers. Minimum 10. It looks more like skin to be looking through so many layers because you can sort of see through them in oil. And I think you've noticed with the colored pencil, even though they're kind of opaque, they're sort of semi-transparent. And they, so layer after layer after layer till you get the color, the opaqueness, the texture, for skin, the smoothness. So I build up so many layers. And I'm not really seeing paper through it at the end, if at all possible. I'm looking at a picture where I keep feeling like I am seeing the paper, but I'm not, because I know I chose a pale blue paper, the little girl and the fox that I drew this winter when I was sick, and it's still pale blue because all the snowy cold background, the reflections in her jacket, everything was blue. I'll pull it off the wall later or have my daughter do that. I wanted to also, although we can start on this picture and give it, begin to start sort of build up the blue where we see blue. And I can talk about the different things about doing I'd start in the sky, just to sort of get rid of the sky. I'd give it one layer of the blue that you're going to use in the sky, because we're going to start putting that down in the water down below.
What are you using, Lisa, for color?
I am using,
What's it? Cloud
yeah.
blue?
I
Which-
can't tell you. You don't have this color. You might if you have this color. This is a deco blue. I'll get a blue that you have, because that one nobody has.
Okay, your choices are powder blue and cloud blue.
Yeah. So the first one I put on there was one of those. Cloud blue, I think. Yep, cloud blue,
Okay, cool.
powder blue. And I also pulled up for that 48 set, for those who have that, I pulled up the color. There's a light cerulean blue. Light aqua is very similar, especially if you mix, deco blue is somewhere between the light cerulean blue and light aqua. They discontinued the deco colors, and it was so funny. I was watching, this is a little bit of a deeper blue, and it's good to mix a little of that in with your lighter powder. Or sky blue light is another good one if you have that one. And I know some of you have different sets. The other thing was, I was watching Bonnie Snowden work, and she started discussing her color choices because someone said the same thing. I see my my picture went away for a second. Hold on, let me see what happened. I lost my camera. I'm seeing if it unplugged or something. Might be the case. But she answered this perfectly and said, I'm waiting for my other camera to come back up. Seems to have unplugged. Okay. There's me, but I only am showing one camera. This will be bad if it doesn't come up. Oh my goodness. Anyway, she said you have all these colors, and you give everybody the list of what's on there, and you start working, and something else occurs to you to use a different color. So it doesn't always work. The best thing to do anyway is, because we also have different choices. I'm checking my connection on this with my feet, which is probably stupid. Ah, there we go. Okay. I think my chair dragged over the wire, and I will take this later so that that doesn't happen again. I've moved all these cameras around so many times. So anyway, you start working, and there's another color you want. So yes, start with your powder blue, your cloud blue, sky blue light, whatever you have. If you have deco blue, lucky you. But light cerulean blue is a good one. And that's another reason why we were working with colors before, with the color wheel. And I was showing you how some colors work better with each other than others. And another one, you think, oh, that's the next in line. But then look how much more aqua it has in it. Which one? This one looks more the next in line. Looks like it's made of the same base of colors, but one is darker, one is lighter. And then I could say, oh, but I want my sky to be a little more aqua. Good. Then add the aqua. So it helps your decisions which way you want to go. Do I want to have a little more aqua in the sky? The sky is much more of a strong blue up at the top of the picture, and then it gets lighter. So even if you don't have whatever color I have in my hand, which is just light blue, that is all it is. And I'm working that into the powder blue. And I'm just kind of giving like one layer's worth. This is a time when I just have a lot of area to cover. And you may take one of those things we used on the first day. Remember, we used the alcohol, the Vaseline, the baby oil, the whatever, and give yourself a base. I would say alcohol, because anything else is probably going to prohibit you from working further, because it'll get into the paper and kind of stain it. But if you wanted to, you could do any of those things. I'm going to show you all the things that I use for mixed media in order to get a very painterly look, which you really want with water and sky. I want my sky smoother, you know, that's just the way you feel about it when you look at it. It's like, it should be smoother. It should be smooth sky, just except where the clouds are. So, grabbing a little brush because I don't see my other brush here. You know, you put everything in front of you for the class, and then it's not where you think it is. All supposed to be here. So if that will help you smooth it, you can. I need a coarser brush, and I'm putting
That's
alcohol.
alcohol?
Just doing the alcohol thing.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I'm getting a coarser brush out here. And even with the alcohol, sometimes you just need a little more down here. And you can work your pencil right into the wet, as long as you're careful and you're not tearing up your paper. Kind of getting it moistened and filling it in. Whatever you want to do to make this covered and smooth. If we're a couple more layers in, I would probably use the Vaseline and get it, and then I'll really be able to kind of rub it in. So here are the things that work well. Do not use acrylic paint with your colored pencils. It has too much of a rubbery surface, and it won't work well with them. I use watercolors. However, that's a nice new set. This set I've had for at least 30 years, if not more. And I never clean it because I have like favorite colors, and I'm like, oh yeah, I want that color pink again. So I leave it there and just re-wet into it. You can use watercolor, but remember that watercolor is transparent. And so it doesn't do much on a dark paper like this, but it is a thing that will work with colored pencil because it's light, it's transparent, and you can fill in background areas with it. So that's fine. Look at my favorite set. This is really old, and it's an old praying set. So it's like kids color pencils. I mean, kids watercolor. It's not going to get a lot of coverage, but it'll tint your colors that you put down. It will work over or under your color pencils. My girl with the goat in the background, I covered her with blue watercolor at one point. I mean, just poured it down her. I don't know if you guys are familiar with an artist by the name of Ali Kavanaugh, but she does these exquisite watercolor portraits, and it looks like she poured the paint and the face just came out of it. It's just amazing. And so I was looking at a lot of her work, and I was just so taken with it.
Lisa,
Yes.
what does water do to your board? I mean, the paper, doesn't it buckle it when you add it over the colored pencil or with it?
Yeah.
It must.
Yeah, it does, because paper
Yeah.
is cotton. So as long as this is wet, it bubbles up.
Okay, so how do you
I'm
keep it
taped
dry?
down. I'm taped down, and it will return as soon as it's dry. Like down here where I put the alcohol, it's dry now, so it's flat now. And this
Okay.
will stop being buckly. So don't worry about it. But I also would leave it alone while it's buckled.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, so the better thing to use is gouache, which is Gouach, gouache, gouache. It comes in tubes, and the tube is the best way for some things like the white, where you want the white to be thick, and you probably want to keep a little bit of white around. But Karen Dash, who I'm just starting to really like a lot, because they came out with a set that's in a pan, like a watercolor set. Because we know how, like if I put out watercolors from tubes, it's like, how much do I put out? How much is going to sit there and be wasted? And in my pan, you see this bit of white here? It's rewettable. It is opaque. It is the best thing to use for color pencils, because the reason this is opaque, I'm getting some blue and mixing this into a light blue, is because there's chalk in it. So if I were going to buy one thing and say I'm going to do mixed media with my color pencil, I can make this transparent like the watercolor by adding more water. But if I thicken it up a little bit, it is a nice opaque coverage. It is opaque because it's watercolor with chalk in it. So the other thing about it having chalk in it is that chalk gives it some grittiness. And when it's dry, you will see that it will both bond on top of the colored pencil like you're seeing now, but the colored pencil will grab onto it because it's just that little bit of texture. Like we don't want really, really, really smooth paper, because then we can only do one layer. That titanium white in those products, Meredith, that you were talking about from Brush and Pencil, she has a spray, she has a powder, she has a whatever. The idea is that you're adding another layer of grit so you can go one more layer. Like when you can't seem to get the white back, you can add that titanium white and bring the white back. Color Pencil Society of America decided it was not allowed. Anything like that or like this, adding gouache, are not allowed because they didn't start as color pencil and they kind of don't end as color pencil. They're mixed, so they can go in their mixed media. They have a mixed media category, but they can't go in their international competition. I have my signature status in the mixed category, the CPX, for all of my color pencil with gouache, because that's what I had been doing for years, is when I wanted another layer, I could paint directly over the entire portrait I did and then give it another layer, because that grit allows you to grab into it one more time. And these are called watercolor. Excuse them for being dirty, and they are in the earth tones so that I could use them for portraits. This is Richeson's, and they call them watercolors, and it's their portrait set. But to me, they're very gritty, just like the gouache. So
Lisa?
I just use those.
Oh.
Yeah, go ahead.
Lisa, it's Rita again. Do you have ever used watercolor pencils? Because I got a set of those and I haven't got a clue as to how to use them. And I don't know if anybody else in the
Yeah,
audience has
okay,
ever used them.
so remember what I said about the Inktense pencil?
Right?
If I have the Inktense pencil, it's ink. So just like the Museum Aquarelle white, you see which one goes down whiter is the Museum Aquarelle. But Inktense goes down pretty, and they make a whole full set of these. So I can do blacks in this, I can do colors in this. And I used to take their blocks, because they come in both pencils and blocks, and I used to take the Inktense and open up the set of the blocks, and if I was on location painting, then I would just take a cup of water and paint over the blocks. And now Inktense made, and my lovely adult daughter bought me for Christmas or a birthday or something. This is the Inktense pencil, or Inktense in a block, so that you can paint with it. And it's going to go down with much more intensity. Now, the reason I'm saying all that when you're asking about watercolor pencils is all I find with the watercolor pencils is that when they get wet, they seem lighter. So all your hard work, like a lot of people will do the sketch and then take the brush to fill in, and I feel like then all your good hard work just went away. Because if I took water and watered it down, then it goes away. Whereas the Inktense products, whether it's this set or the block or the pencils, you get them wet and they get more intense, because you get them wet and they become ink. I'll find the black one so I can show you that. So here's my black pencil, and I'm going to put it out here on the edge somewhere up here in the corner. I'll move the corner into the picture so you can see it. Okay, so I'm coloring with this. If this was a watercolor pencil, if I got it wet, it would just fade away. It's an Inktense pencil. When I get it wet, it becomes ink. Do you see that? It got darker. And you can do it that way, or you can get the tips wet. So with your watercolor pencils, I would get the tip wet and then work like that. I think that's the only way to get enough vibrancy out of them, because otherwise they get wet, and I'm purposefully wiping this away. They get wet, they get lighter, because I didn't really need black up in that corner. Inktense pencils and watercolor pencils are allowed to be mixed with color pencils for strict competitions like the Color Pencil Societies International, because they started as pencils and they ended as pencils. Watercolor pencils, Inktense pencils are allowed. But if I'm going to be painting something on, that's mixed media. And that's just technical for anybody who's headed that direction. At one point, I saw that people had little letters up after their name and was like, ooh, what's that? I want that too. So watercolor and gouache are your main things. And another thing that's being used now quite a bit is a neocolor, or again, aquarelle, which is watercolor, water soluble. This one's made by Statler Mars. Caran d'Ache makes the neocolor ones. And what they are is a water-soluble crayon. So you can crayon in your background, and you can use either method to get it wet and blend it. Ooh, I like that color. I'm gonna put that across the top. Where I said the top of the sky was darker, I'm just kind of playing to get it darker while showing you these things. So the other thing you could do is get the tip wet and then work with it. So a lot of times we want to bring a white back, and I showed you with the Inktense and the Museum Aquarelle how to bring the white back for the highlight in the dog's eye. You can also do that with a, we broke these, but this is the white Neocolor crayon. And you can bring all your white or your light back in with that too, wet. Now you see what a messy painter I am at heart, when my work is always messy, because at heart I'm not just a painter. So I like to mess with things and mix things, and mixed media is a good way for me to go here. My daughter got me one Christmas from a thrift shop in Paris, and this is made by Conte. So it's Conte from Paris is, you know, the Conte crayons, the real good charcoal sticks. Well, they're Conte sticks. But this is before the inventions of Crayola crayons. But they called these Crayola. Nouveau crayons. So, and they're very old, so there's lots of wax bloom all over them. But I actually added them into a picture. They do work, and I added them into a picture. However, they're not water soluble. It was just a fun thing that she gave me, and I've added those in. And some of the Neocolor crayons, the Neocolor 1, are not water soluble, but they are compatible with, they're compatible with the color pencil, but they're not water soluble. It's the Neocolor 2 that are the water soluble ones, or any, they'll say water soluble wax crayons. Statler makes them. I've seen store brands like Artist Loft and whatever, the cheap brands, they all make them watercolor crayons or water soluble crayons. So that's all up in the sky. Now my other things that we did in class the other time, the baby oil, the whatever, we also did that wax stick. Which is also Caran d'Ache, and it comes the full blender stick, and it's a stick of wax, and I really truly love this as my best way. I don't want to use it in the sky because the paper is still a little bit wet here, and you saw that pull back a little bit. But down here, if I use this just over it, and I want to use it as a blender, or I want to use it just to get rid of the look of the streaks, because in the sky and in the water, we don't want all those pencil strokes, except where the ripples are. I want it to be smooth. So the sky is going to take, after all this dries, I'll probably take another layer. And then, but this is my favorite. That and the alcohol are probably my favorite ways to do it. I have one last thing that I'm going to show you. And that is heat. Was one of you asking about, no, that was somewhere else. Somebody was asking me, Alicia, can I have your help for a second? I'm pulling something from the wrong side of my desk and it's not going to reach. Can I pass that through to you? Thank you. I didn't know where the wire was up here. I'm going to heat up my heating pad. And that's another way to get a really painterly look out of colored pencil because it melts it. So unless I was outside working in the sun, which I've done before too, there is a device called the Icarus board, and it costs about $400. And before I would spend such an amount, I wanted to know how much would I use the heat that it would be worth it for me to spend the $400. So I tried it with the heating pad, and I haven't been unhappy with the heating pad, and I don't use it that often. I'll use it in some areas of the background. You know, I want all the grass behind the bunny to look all blended in, so I'll use something. And I don't use it often enough to probably spend the $400. But if you find it's your favorite way to work, then yes, the Icarus board would be a smooth surface. For this, I just take it and I sandwich it between two drawing surfaces and let it heat up my paper. So I've turned it on and it'll take a little while before it'll heat up. And in the meantime, while you guys are filling in your skies, or you can start to put a little color down below into the water. What I was going to do was I was going to tell you a little bit about, oops, I'm on the wrong screen. Sorry. Tell you a little bit about the nature of water in art and making water. Because as one person in our class, Karen, told me, I could do a whole series on water because there's so many different types. There's water in a landscape like this, but there's water in a glass, and you know, water, running water, splashing water, water droplets like we were putting last week. There's so much that it's very complex. There's moving water, there's still water, and there's ocean, which is a whole other thing. So, and I have a friend who just completely focuses only on the ocean. So there's so many types of water. And I don't consider myself to be the expert on all of them, but like the type of water that you want to put in your picture, you have to be observant about enough of it to get it to be believable. So while you're putting things in, we talked about the sky, we want it to be smooth. It's also good to have a good horizontal movement to it because that's the way the wind goes. If I suddenly put some strokes in that are going this way, you would tell me in my picture looking at it, oh, it's raining. At least maybe it's raining in the background back there. I don't want to do too much there because the paper still has water in it. The surface of water is flat as well. If I do the same thing and start coloring it in, oh, well, this whole area is blue, I can go up and down. No, it'll look like I have a waterfall there, or a stream coming down the hill, or something. There's a wave coming. So you want your strokes to be really horizontal. And there's so many different kinds of bodies of water. Like I said, there's puddles and shallow water and creeks, and water is affected by what is reflecting in it and what you're seeing through it. So in that way, it's kind of like glass. And then you have to be aware of ripples and how it moves, and what it's moving over. Like if our rocks are near the surface and that causes a ripple. The reflections in the swimming pool, for instance. I was looking at a photograph. It was somebody's birthday on Facebook, and I clicked on, and her profile picture was her and her daughters in the swimming pool. And it was like, I just wanted to cut their faces out of the picture, and I was just really drawn to all the reflections and the distortions of them through the water. It was really cool. And just like glass, you go from light to dark areas very quickly. You know, when I was picking the color, we have this bright blue that's reflecting from the sky, and we have the brown of what's underneath that's coming through as the watercolor. Water itself, I always ask people, what color is water? Water is clear. What color is the sky? The sky is clear. It appears blue because of the water in the atmosphere and what we're seeing beyond. Maybe even seeing the blackness of space through our atmosphere makes the sky blue. Somebody actually had a more scientific reason, but we're seeing it as blue because we're seeing that atmosphere, and then black has blue, is a blue base to it. So it's reflecting in clear water like a mirror, and then we're seeing what's underneath. Is there algae? Is there rock? Is it green? Is it brown? But the water itself, if you picked it up, it would be clear. We would hope. If it's an Adirondack lake, it's clear. Ripples make it go from light to dark areas very quickly. And like I was saying, you want to go from horizontal.
Excuse me, Lisa, are you drawing on your paper?
I am not drawing right now. I was actually reading something that I had notes on for things to say about water.
Oh, no worries. I was making sure.
I was just letting it
Okay.
sit for a moment.
Yep, no worries.
Shallow water is generally warmer in tone, which is affected by the rock stand and algae underneath. Lakes, rivers, and streams tend to be greener, and this is caused by the sediment of the water, which reflects more light. A lake, river, stream generally tends more towards green particles floating in the water, reflecting the light. The value of the blue-green decreases and gets darker as the water gets deeper. Yeah, I guess so. The sky reflected in the water is generally a deeper version of the sky of the color above. So we're more in this tone than this tone on the paper. So when you pick up your pencil and my paper is nice and warm now, so I want to draw and show you that if I were to draw with my pencil, it flows because the wax is kind of melting. It flows, and a lot of pencil comes off right on top. It feels like painting with a point. It's kind of fun to do. It's also kind of melting my pencil, so you see these little crumbs coming up. Be careful with them and kind of Swiffer them away. Be careful where you rub them. And it'll wear down your pencil rather quickly. However, it'll also finish a large area in a short amount of time. It's almost as quick as if I was, with my brush filling in. So what I'm doing here is I am just trying to fill in the areas that are going to be blue and leaving the brownish ripples for now as the paper. I can come back with another pencil. It's a good idea when you're using heat to give your pencil a little break. Because it can get so warm that I'm just kind of, I'm not even able to sharpen it right now. Let it cool off for a minute and before I sharpen it, or else my sharpening will make it all go away. And I'm doing the same as I did in the sky. I'm kind of going the light over the darker blue. And I can do that a little in the sky as well to give it another layer. It goes really quickly and it goes down very smooth without any pencil points. So it really feels like I'm painting. That part is still a little wet.
So Lisa, you're using your Prismacolor pencils?
Yes, I am.
The heat?
I try to use the Prismacolor pencils mostly in this class, or really mostly for anything. I like to use Prismacolor pencils because
Well, it's nice and waxy, so it's obviously melting. Wow, that's great.
yeah, they are. I'm putting a little of the ginger root up in the lighter parts because it has a little olivey to it. And then you can switch over to an olivey green. Just so you know, this is one of those blender pencils. And if I used it to blend, as much as it might be pushing these two blues together, I see all these crumbs coming up. It's really stripping the color right off the paper. So that's why I don't use those as a blender or as a way to add any layers or mixed media to the picture. Rita, you were in my landscape class that time that I had people mix everything.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was very similar to what we did with the kumquats, but I would say to anybody who's going to do a landscape to maybe possibly limit your colors and try to create the colors out of what you have. So I have put down a little brown, and then I'm using the lime peel, the olivey green, and for the light I use ginger root, which has a little olivey to its cream. But you could use a cream and an olive, whatever ones you're feeling like. But then limit yourself to like, I'm going to do it all in these three colors because you don't want it to look too choppy. I can take the green and lighten it with this, and take the brown and darken it with this. And that way it doesn't look so patchworky when all of your colors are made out of the same three. And 3 is a good number when you're trying to make a color palette for yourself. Later on, we can add stuff if we feel like the green of the tree really needs to go another direction than olive, which it does. It looks like there's some dark green or some, I don't want to say Kelly green, but there's a dark green in Prismacolor that is just a dark green, and it's kind of like a Kelly green base. Had it in my hand. But I mean, it has a little more of a blue green to it, like a Kelly green, than the olive, and I feel like there is probably a little of that in the trees, but mixed in with the darker brownish. You want to mix them together. And then down below, going into the water when you have the tree, I'd stick to kind of the olivey at first. You know, whatever you're doing up above, and bring it down into the water and keep in that same tone. Now, one thing I like to do is pick a color that's really close to the color of the paper. In this case, I'm picking the light umber. It's a shade darker, but it's in the family of the paper. So I feel like I'm straying from my original thought of having the blue plus this. I have the blue and I have the paper color. I don't think there's a color that's closer. I think there's just this, and then maybe mix it with something to lighten it if I needed to come back and bring the paper color if I felt like I had gone too dark. And there are lots of trees there that you're going to do like this. I want to get back to the water though.
Hey, Lisa.
Yeah.
So can we try an experiment, Meredith? Could you mute yourself? I'm not sure if we're in a little feedback from your microphone, maybe.
Oh.
I'm actually muted on a headset.
Yeah, you're not muted in the room. That's weird. I just muted it. Is that better for everybody?
It didn't do it, so that was not the experiment.
Yeah, I keep hearing that scratching too, but I thought it was just me.
No worries, it's not horrible, but just thought maybe that might be it.
Yeah. I wasn't watching up there, so I didn't know who was muted or not. Is it doing the echoey thing?
No, it's just like a scratchy kind of feedbacky type of noise. It's not horrible.
Yeah, it's like an old phonograph or something. It's just a little light.
No, I don't hear that. But when I record myself, I've been getting that. So I wonder if it's not on my end. And I'm going to double check my, at some point here, I'm going to double check. Because now I've got the two new cameras. And I think I may have confused my computer as to what microphone it's using. And my choices say, I don't know. It's like computer audio, phone audio. I need to check what speaker we're using, because if it's on the sound bar, the same as my speakers, it's not very nice. I did a video the other day and I was like, oh, that sounds bad.
It's not a big deal.
It was very crackly. Yeah, but I, just for myself, I want to kind of. So even though my feeling is like, I want to draw the trees this way, and you can give yourself a line, please do them by making little horizontal strokes, or else it won't look like water. The water surface is flat, except for where there's a ripple, which is why it comes out being, there's a ripple of brown in it, where it catches the light and where it catches the shadow. So you've got brown and sky reflected and brown shadow and sky reflected. So it goes back and forth between the brown and the, gotta find my edge of the lake. I also put my daughter in my picture. I have a picture of my daughter feeding ducks in a little white dress when she was little. So I have her on the side here, but you do see the whole edge of the water. So if you use the heat, it does speed things along a little bit. It will also burn through your pencils and do other fun things. And those are pretty much all of my mixed media tricks that I would use. Okay, so now this is kind of the background, the sky, the water, and then we have the close water. And the close water, because obviously we can keep going and reflecting trees and drawing sky and adding clouds on top, which I forgot to draw, but I can add them in and get the whole scene here exactly like the picture. Brighten up my grass on the edge. And some of the light rocks that are coming out. At the edge of the water, at the very, very, very edge of the water, I would get the darkest brown or even some black. In fact, black is probably a good idea. Just sort of outline at that edge and then take your brown back over it. Because I don't want to see black at the edge. But black in watercolor and colored pencil, you can add black just enough to darken that color. So I did black to define my edge. And that was silly because I believe right above it there was some light little rocks. And then right below it, there might be a little dark blue. Thought I pulled indigo and I pulled violet blue. And then it'll go straight into the watercolor. But you have that very dark edge to the water. As you get closer, you can see it better as, oh, under the grass, I've got just a little darker green. Oh, did she leave you? Hey, Alicia, you might have to get the dog. You know, they're not used to being alone, not for 1 minute anymore. And then down in the water, I see the lighter green reflected. Just a little bit. And in between that, there's a dark line. So you're going to start to see all kinds of colors. I see greens and olives. And the tree colors coming down. And then it kind of gets away from you, like, oh my goodness, it's like so many multicolored. How's that going to look like anything? There are two ways. One is that you're going to keep everything horizontal, and the other is that here and there, whether it's the blue streaking in, where the blue streaks in, or whether you take that color you're keeping on hand, that's the color of the paper, my light umber in my case because of the color of my paper, and I can bring that in a very horizontal way. Kind of ties all of that together. So none of that gets too far away from me. The fact that over here I see grass reflected and I see trees reflected and I see everything. Now the things underneath, they can be very distorted. I'm just going to take one or two of the rocks or a rock shape. Hang on a second, I'm not going to do that one. I put into my picture, and I'm going to draw it a little clearer, one little ducky and my daughter over here as though she's feeding it. So I want to make sure I stay off those two areas. We always used to go up to the Adirondacks in the summer, and the water is so clear. You can see all the pebbles through it. You could even drink the water if you want to. And do you ever watch that My Lottery Dream Home? There were these women who won a lottery in upstate New York, and they wanted to go to the very lake that I almost moved to after I got divorced. And the water is so crystal clear that you can see it. You can even pick it up and drink it. And they were taking the dare to drink a cup of it right out of the water. But the host of the show was like, no, I'm not drinking that, because we're not used to water that truly is that clear. There are lakes that are fed by the clear mountain streams, and they're just unbelievably clear water. So I'm seeing the lights and the darks of the rocks and whatever is underneath here. By the way, I did take the heat out from underneath because I just didn't want to be, you know, like here where I want to put it down and then tint it. I'm tinting over it with some of the blue, and I'm going to go back into it with some of the olive and the brown too, because there are still ripples. And even though I'm seeing the light in the dark, I'm also seeing the edge of a rock. So there's something under, but there's also what's happening on the surface. When you're closer, about all you have is that it may all be tinted the color of the water, which I'm using the olive and the paper color of the brown, and I'm keeping it very horizontal. If I was drawing a rock out in the sunlight, it would have different highlights on it than one here where I can just only see it as light as the water and then with dark around it. So the rock that's on top of the water, I'm trying to find my drawing and where I put it, has some water around it. It may even have water up the side of it a little bit here. But when it comes out into the light, it actually has maybe not bright white, but some lighter surface colors. They may just be a really pale gray. And it doesn't have the color of the water in it. And then beyond it is water that has the color of the water in it. I have to sharpen my pencil. Sorry for the noise. My poor pencil sharpener sounds like it's dying because it's plugged into the same outlet as the computer, so it doesn't get enough juice. So whereas this water is just coming up to the edge of the rock,
Lisa, would you move your drawing a little to the left?
oh yeah, sorry,
Oh, great, thank you.
Yeah. thanks. Whereas that's coming just to the edge of the rock, I can see some watercolor there, color of the water there. These stripes of water continue, and the ones that are underwater, I can go right over with my colors that I'm using for the water, which are olives and browns. And I haven't sketched in all the rocks. I'm also going to change some of mine because if her little feet are here, she's either standing on the edge of the grass or the rock. So I was kind of leaving that for a moment while I decided what exactly I was going to have her stand on, a rock or whatever. And then of course we have our duck over here. I want to leave that as kind of a negative space for now. Can sketch that in later. And I don't think the bluishness has gone away because I feel like even though I've gotten a little more seeing what's underneath, I feel like I'm seeing a little bit of the bluish over some of these rocks that are under the water before it goes back and it starts getting more and more blue. Some of them are, some of the blue parts are rather dark in the ripples here. Now I want my heat back on to get those, where they're alternating between lighter and darker blue. And that was just the darker blue was just the one that's light blue, number 904. And then the lighter one was the light colors we had before. Sorry, I picked up my deco blue instead of my powder blue. And there's the non-photo blue and this light cerulean. They're all nice, light, medium color blues. There we go. It's backwards to me, so as I'm trying to find where I'm going with it. As you can see, this could take a very, very, very long time. When we were doing I allowed my landscape class to do a landscape in 5 colors. And what I had them do was just take the picture and copy 1 inch of it, sky to bottom, just 1 inch at a time. It's not a bad way to copy a picture. Just undo that much of your photo that you're looking at and then do it inch by inch. As far as the water's concerned, the sky, you know, obviously it's sky. It's all going to be blue with clouds and whatever. But to get the trees, oopsie, the trees and then have them reflecting in the water, you want to almost go ripple by ripple, area by area. So whether you do it this way or this way, it might be good to cover up and section off and just do little bits at a time, so that you're not faced with, how do I do the whole water and where does this line of reflection end, and you know, how far down are the trees reflecting. Just section yourself off and go little by little, and I think that's the best way to approach it going forward. I'm going to draw a little bit more of what's going on in this reflected area in the back. So, but from the trees down into the water. There are a few things going on in the trees. When we're drawing anything perpendicular to the earth, like a tree, a stop sign, a telephone pole, a house, you can go ahead and draw it vertical, a vertical on your paper. And there's reddish back here. And there's light colors behind the trees up at the top. And olives in between, which I should do mountain direction. And then there's the trees, which are somebody dropped something upstairs. Oh, they go almost to the top of the picture. And then here they start to go all the way up to the top of the picture, and all of this is going to be filled in green. I brought my sky over pretty far. Nice to draw the tree branches individually, because then you get all of that sky showing through. Even though they are going to be clustered together a little bit more. And one side is much more dense and dark. But especially as you go up, they're just, you know, they get more sparse. And tree branches are shadowed underneath, and this side is more shadowy. I just want to get a sense of what's up above that we're going to be reflecting, because there's so many trees. I could spend hours in this one little area, but I'd rather come back to it and get to the water. So I'm giving myself a little line where I know there's a tree. But I don't want to take it all the way, even down to where I know it is going to be. feel like this one, this tall one, comes all the way to the rock. A little extra brown in the ripples. That's why it's good to have this brown base paper color as a color, even though parts of it are darker. And up here where the tree ends, where we can see a treetop or space in between the trees, then I've got the blue sky in between again. So I may start off saying, this whole side over here by the rocks is pretty olivey, but then it's going to have brown ripples because that's from the large tree over. And this one has brown ripples and olive for the trees, and then it's going into the blue. Starting to appear, I've got a lot of glare over there, starting to appear like the reflections, like the picture that we're looking at. But it's very shiny. So I tilt it up. Use my light. There we go. Just move it away a little bit. How are you guys doing? Let me see what you're doing and unpin myself here for a second. So this is a neat statement. On the surface of clear water, which is what we're looking at, shadow areas, like the tree areas over here, offer a window into what's deeper in the under the water, the objects under the water. When I'm getting that reflection from the sky, I'm not really looking at what's under, I'm just looking at whether or not the tree is reflecting or the sky is reflecting. But when it's in shadow, I start to see all the rocks and the things that are underneath. So, and then water becomes less reflective the closer the viewer is. So down here, we're a little bit of sky color reflecting, but mostly we're looking through into the rock. We want to keep those horizontal strokes so we know water from rock that's out of water to rock that's underwater, but mostly it's about what we're seeing through the water when we're closer to the water. Calm water, close water, the water at our feet rather than the water far away. So the things back here are going to be more having to do with a clear difference between the reflected trees and the brown shadows and the blue sky. And down here, or in this shadowy area, they become more olivey as we go. So now those little comments about water that I was making, I think that I can either give you a link or copy them, and it was from something about painting water, but I feel like some of the observations stand whether or not we're painting or drawing. And especially if you're using any mixed media, because the mixed media here is great for, as you saw with the heat, but also to say, I just want to fill in a little bit of these ripples. So I'm going to just take some gouache, some watercolor, a marker, anything, and just, you know, drag them through to give it that real painterly look. Or take my alcohol or baby oil or whatever and drag my lines through. Because you saw, just when I made those lines, water makes good water. A water media makes really great water. And then our pencils give it the definition. So what have you guys done, or do you have any questions? You have to unmute yourself if you need to. But feel free to unmute yourself and ask a question or show me what you've got going on there.
I watched a lot this time because there's a lot to take in on this.
Yeah.
Color
Yeah, there
right?
is. Don't feel bad about that at all. That's what I've had people do, that just watch.
Yeah, I mean, I did some playing around here and there, but this is pretty challenging. There's a lot going on.
There is a lot going on. So like Karen, you were right, because when you said, oh, you should do a whole series just on water. And it's true, but it's like I only do the water that's going to be in the picture. That I'm going to do the water of the lake that's going to be in the picture I'm doing now. I'm going to do the ocean in the background of the picture that I'm going to do. Oh, the other day I was drawing a graphite drawing of an ocean, just with some younger students, just to do a project that we were doing in a Zoom class. But I'm also looking at, in order to do that, I'm looking at the person whose work I most admire of doing oceans. Or, you know, I'm in this case thinking of my experiences with lake water, which is, you know, we're more of a go to the mountain lake vacation than ocean people. I don't like sitting in the sand getting sunburned. I'd rather go up to a nice cool mountain, get out of the Virginia heat. So, you know, I've made plenty of observations on the water here of this type of water, of a lake. I think it's getting to look like a lake here, more and more as I go. And what did you guys do?
So I was feeling a little challenged and rushed, but this is what I've gotten so far.
Oh, that's
It's
nice.
it's definitely not the way I'm used to working with, very tight and so forth, but
Yeah,
it loosens me up a little bit too.
Yeah, you've got to be a little more loose, and just
Yeah.
keep, you know, some of your water, keep nice long strokes. Or if you have a tree reflected, there's nothing wrong with taking a tree and here's my tree coming down and letting it flow into the shape of the ripples that you're having. It's okay. It'll make it almost more believable as water to go ahead and find some shapes. If you see them in the picture,
Okay.
yeah. If you see things in the picture, like I was starting to see more brown dragged across into the ripples than I originally had. But anybody else have anything? Rita, did you draw anything? Nothing.
No, I didn't. I totally watched on this one, so I was.
Oh, okay. That's fine. No,
Yeah.
because like I said, I've recorded it, and I'm actually going to stop the recording. because there's no reason for me to record further, I think. Stop.